Okay, we're live, but we must and we shall and we will let it breathe, baby. Gotta let it breathe. We'll fire this episode up. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, my fellow football priest. You know him, you love him, Zack Kelberman. We are sifting through the aftermath, Zach, of yet another impotent, pathetic performance collectively by the Denver Broncos. We hoped that when next we were talking with our community, Zach, we'd have some news on the Nathaniel Hackett front that he'd been shown the door, but they're not doing it, which means I felt like that was rock bottom, Zach. So if that was rock bottom, maybe I'm wrong and there's an even deeper hole they're going to fall into, and they don't fire him, he's going to last till the end of the season. But you had some insight from something Peter King reported today that you should probably tell people.
Yeah, I mean, for those who haven't saw the story by now, it's up on the website. Peter King said it'd be extremely surprising if Hackett was not one and done as the Broncos head coach. And if it was going to happen, it was going to happen today. You could have argued it should have happened in London or after London, but he bought himself some time. I thought getting swept by the Raiders and then losing to the Panthers and just how much lower you can go would lead to Hackett's firing. But it seems like George Payton is going to be a little more patient than we all would like and see this thing out till the end of the year. I don't know what that does in terms of a positive for the team. I think it sends the wrong message, but that's Peyton's choice to make or the Walton Penner group choice to make. So Hackett's safe for now.
I just don't understand what they think the upside is to waiting. I wrote about this yesterday. There is no upside to waiting. All you're doing is further risking and exacerbating, Zach, the deterioration of Russell Wilson and this team as Cole Johnson jumps in with a kaboom super chat.
Thank you, Cole.
And this is a newer name, at least on this level. Cole, you're throwing down like a big baller boss boy, dude. Thank you, my friend. That is seriously hats off to you, my dog. He says, you guys are awesome, ready to fire Hackett and move on to better things. Completely and totally embarrassing. Cole, you're a prince. Thank you, big dog.
Yeah, I mean, we're all ready for it. Some of us were ready for the Broncos to move on, rip the Band-Aid off after the game yesterday, but again, they're seeing it out for the final 6 games, and then you and I, or at least I will undergo my 4th head coaching search while being on the Broncos beat. 4 head coaching searches, 0 playoff games. That's where we're at.
Let's see. I've Kubiak, VJ. So I'm just one more than you. I was just around for the Kubiak thing. But yes, it's not going to happen, guys. I don't think anyway. I mean, barring some kind of unforeseen depredation, some new depths that get uncovered somehow, some way, which going into Baltimore, that is a road game, right? I'm not tripping. It's at Baltimore, right? It's a double East Coast whammy bar there. So anyway, Cole, you're a prince, dude. Thank you very much. We don't take that for granted. It helps us keep the lights on. We really appreciate you, big dog. Make sure you connect with us, Cole, by the way, on Twitter, okay? And shout us out. Make sure you do one of these in our mentions because the handles are often different than whatever it is on Twitter. Sometimes, most of the time anyway, it's different than what it is on YouTube. So make sure we know who's who in our mentions, and we'll follow back. Sambam, you talk about royalty, talk about princes among princes. Sambam, he's right up there. He says, evening, Chad and Zach. The best part about hitting rock bottom, it's only up from here. This is without a doubt the most miserable I've ever felt as a Broncos fan, and I've been a fan since '94. Black Monday needs to get here. Denver Broncos for life. Thank you, buddy.
I feel like we've been saying that every year, though. It's, the best part about hitting rock bottom is nowhere to go but up. But they go back up, they take a step forward to take 5 steps backward. Yeah, we're all looking forward to Black Monday once more, but they have to get the head coaching hire right, same as every other year. And we thought they had it right with Hackett. We all thought he'd be the long-term fixture at head coach for the team, and he was anything but that. It's in NFL history and Broncos history, this will go down as the biggest abject failure at head coach, even including McDaniels, who got a season and a half. Only getting 1 from Hackett really says something.
It's got to be up there. The Duchess jumping in. We miss you every time you're not in the chat. We love you. Hope I'm reading this a little bit as I'm talking, and it's a bummer to hear. I'm sorry. Michaela says, sorry, I've not been able to be around as much as I wanted. Dealing with a mother with dementia and a stupid brother in town. Here's to the topic. Why keep Hackett? Obviously, it isn't working. Much love to you all. Prayers up. That's a really tough situation. Okay, I've been in a similar boat, and it's so frustrating. So, thoughts and prayers for Michaela and her mother, and maybe brother in town. Maybe it's temporary. You don't have to deal with him for too long. He'll go back home.
Yeah, Michaela, don't even sweat the super or anything like that. Just, take care of your family that comes most important, and your mom. And I understand sibling angst. I get that completely. Every family has something going on, and I'm glad to hear you're at least holding things down while still being so generous. So thank you again, Michaela, as always.
But Zach, let's put ourselves just for a moment in the shoes of George Payton and Greg Penner. Why are they keeping Hackett? What's the upside? Because I am having a real hard time seeing any. Why keep Hackett right now when he obviously just doesn't? He's just swimming, dude. He was in over his head from the drop.
I don't know. I mean, there's a couple theories. The fact that Peyton didn't pull the trigger on firing Hackett could lead some to believe that Peyton's also on the chopping block along with Hackett. It could be where Peyton doesn't want to fire Hackett because he just handpicked him in January, and that's going to be a black mark on his resume as well. Or maybe the Broncos feel that no one is capable of stepping into the interim role. One reason I want to get rid of Hackett, besides him making his own bed, is seeing what maybe Ejiro Evero could do as the interim head coach. You never know. Maybe he was the one all along that should have been the Broncos head coach, but if you don't try, we'll never know. But I don't see any upside at all. I think it's more of a negative, a cancerous trait to have a lame duck head coach in the locker room, even for 6 games when you know you're going to fire him right after the year.
I am reminded as I read Silent One's super chat here of a quote from Rob Walton after the big song and dance. The ownership transfer is done. Hey, meet the Walton Penners. And Mr. Walton, question, what do you make of George Payton? How do you feel about him as your GM and this new shiny head coach, Nathaniel Hackett? Quote, we're excited. They'll have to perform, but we're excited. Silent One here says, he's sharing a brain with you, Zach, on the possibilities of why Hackett hasn't been fired. He says, our only hope for Hackett's still being here is that this is the owners telling Payton that he doesn't have the power to fire the coach because ... Payton is gone too.
I think that's a mistake. I might be on my own with that one. It's a hill I'll gladly die on. No one's faulting Payton. Even looking back on it, for taking a chance on a younger, offensive-minded coach, energetic guy like Hackett. No one's going to fault him for going out and acquiring Russell Wilson, even considering what they surrendered. And fewer people faulted him for handing Russell Wilson the contract. In hindsight, yeah, it's easy to tear him apart, but he's done so much good for the organization so far. His drafting alone is reason to keep him around. If he picks the next head coach and that head coach fails, yeah, fire Payton. He should fall on the sword for that. But I think it's way too premature to throw the baby out with that bathwater, firing Payton along with Hackett.
Guys, we are just a few days away. We kind of paused the jersey giveaway stuff, but we're right back in the saddle. Okay. This is your updated Super Chat Superstar rankings for the month of November. And you're going to notice here, there's some new faces in the top 5 rankings. We got Deanna Hendry, number 1 right now. Ethan, the DWI guys at 2, Naj at 3, FA at 4, another new name in the top 5, the Duchess at 5. She'll end up climbing after tonight. And then you can see here Garth Knight at 6, Gary, the legend, Leeds Palmer at 7, Proud Pharisees right up there, Gregory Vendeland, Sam Bam round out the top 10. But you can see just a few of these names outside the top 10. But as you know, and if you're new to Mile High Huddle as a new subscriber, what we do here is at the end of the month, we keep tabs on it. At the end of the month, the top 5 finishers on Super Chat, that's a cumulative thing. All right. The top 5 finishers, their names go in a hat, and we randomly draw out. That winner gets to choose a Denver Broncos jersey of their choice. We buy it, we send it, we ship it to them. And that's a small thing we do just as a thank you for the support we get on YouTube and on Facebook. We'll cover Facebook here in a minute. But the Duchess with number 2 tonight, love you. She says, Am I wrong for also getting frustrated with Surtain? He got beat a lot yesterday. Is he turning into a bust? No, he's not turning into a bust. I'm confident in saying that I think you can rest assured he is bust proof, but he's not immune to the bad juju that's happening right now in Denver. And this was one of my concerns, Zach, from the very beginning was, I think the reason he didn't earn bigger accolades and honors as a rookie last year was that he was on a losing team. And even though he started out this season with such a bang, I mean, he had people mentioning him in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation as late as right before the Raiders game. But 2 games in a row, Zach, you end up getting torched. Your team continues to lose. It reflects poorly. I still think Surtain is pretty safe bet for the Pro Bowl if he bounces back from these 2 games where opponents are going, look, there's ways we can beat him. And the ways that they're finding to beat him is by trickeration. He's not really getting beaten on these plays where it's one-on-one. It's where there's a lot of moving parts and he's trying to like mind his zone, keep an eye on his man. A step or 2 is all it takes, right, Zach? And then it's over. So I'm not so worried, but it is still frustrating to see because he was putting forth a nearly perfect season. The only thing you could maybe say that could have made it better was the ball production. But when you aren't getting targeted, how can you pick off passes?
I mean, listen, Deion Sanders got beat. Champ Bailey got beat. It happens to even the great ones. No one's going to never give up a completion again. It might have been the case where some were anointing him a little too quickly. Maybe he read his own press clippings a little bit and saw that, he's the best thing since champ and he's a future Hall of Famer and get his bus going. But he's human. He's going to have bad games. I think not to make excuses because the last couple games weren't great, but he's not getting much help from the back end. Simmons is underperforming. Kareem Jackson is a liability in coverage. They lost K1 Williams at slot cornerback. You lost Ronald Darby at cornerback too. It's all on Patrick Surtain in that secondary. And you lost Caden Stearns, who's much better in pass coverage as well. So teams are targeting Surtain and he's giving up the catches, but those days are going to happen. I also think the defense as a whole, as I talked about yesterday, and as Mike Purcell showed by shouting down Russell Wilson, the defense had enough. They're throwing their hands up. They're checking out now because why shouldn't they? The special teams is checked out. The offense is checked out. The coaching's checked out. So why should they continue sacrificing their body, their livelihood for a losing cause?
Fair point. Mike Reno jumping in. Appreciate you, brother, on Facebook. He says the Broncos are way worse than last season. I am flabbergasted. Well, and it's again, we've talked about this a lot lately. When you're promised significant improvements and relief from the world of suck and you don't deliver, that's one thing. But when you go out and you invest and sink massive resources into a quarterback like Russell Wilson and you go on to become a laughingstock in the league, yeah, the natives get restless. Guys, here's your reminder to make sure you are following our brand new, brand spanking, become one of the first people to follow the brand spanking new Mile High Huddle TikTok account. As you can see, we're putting clips up. We got some fun, unique content that we're going to be rolling out once we get this up to scale a little bit. But the link, I just put it in the chat. I'll pin it to the description of this video on YouTube. Do us a solid if you're a TikTok user. Make sure you're following us because we got some fun, big plans in store for y'all. Zach, let's jump back in the chat here for just a second. Eric Weber jumping in on Facebook. Thank you, buddy. He says, although I will be boycotting the hashtag Broken Broncos until they get their collective you-know-what together, I will keep supporting the Priest and MHH. Mile High salute to Broncos country. Hang tough. Appreciate you, brother. Hey, are you – I want to make sure, dude, I had your Twitter handle right. I was trying to tag you last night. Is it Eric Ryan 29 GSB? Just Scott will look for a reply in the chat. Let me know. Confirm that, buddy. But thank you for the support, big dog. We appreciate you. Zach?
Hopefully Eric didn't boycott football. Hopefully Eric's watching the Monday night game. And I want to know, along with you, Eric, how did the Broncos lose to the Colts? And double down by saying, how did they not score a freaking touchdown against the Colts, man? I'm watching this game against the Steelers, and Kenny Pickett and company are moving the ball at will against that Colts defense. They already picked off Matt Ryan as well. What a sad season, It really has been so far and will be.
Marcus Lewis Henna from across the pond throwing down a very generous super chat. Thank you, Marcus. We usually see you on Facebook, so cool to see you also on YouTube, my brother. Appreciate you. Zach, Melvin Gordon has shacked up, as it were, with a new NFL team, and some might argue in Broncos country that it's the worst possible landing spot. Guess what? If he sticks, you're going to see him twice this year. Tell him about it, Zach.
I think it's kind of funny that Tom Pelissero from NFL Network, who reported the transaction that Melvin signing to the Kansas City practice squad, Pelissero called Gordon another weapon for that Kansas City offense. And I tweeted, I said the weapon, and it's a pistol that's turned around.
I
so
love
you
that,
kill
dude.
yourself when
that's
you
a
fire
great tweet.
Yeah,
great tweet.
That's what Melvin Gordon is, man. So even if he gets the ball, it's actually going to increase the Broncos' chances of winning that game because more than likely he will fumble the ball. I'm not too worried about Melvin. He's free to do what he wants. He has become and always really has been a mercenary. He's a ring chaser. He has no loyalty to any one team. Whatever team is going to give him the opportunity to win a Super Bowl, he's going to go to. We'll see what happens.
That we will. Marcus, appreciate you. Here's the thing about Melvin Gordon. Teams resign themselves to the fumble insecurity because he could also bring it as a runner. This year in particular, I didn't think he was all that great in year 2 as a Bronco. He was a little bit better in year 1, but year 3 as a Bronco, Zach, I didn't see any of that twitch. I mean, we're talking about it took till week 12 for the Broncos to bust off a run, and he is there still. I think Murray finally passed him now with that 92-yard day in Carolina, but it took till week 12 with Gordon still as the team's leading rusher to have a single individual rush of 20 or more yards, and it was Murray that got it. He's missing that twitch. I have a hard time seeing him even giving him the most benefit of the doubt as a true weapon or asset. But then again, Zach, he's been mired in offensive incompetence for 2.5 years. Maybe he'll go there and watch. It's probably what's going to happen. He'll go there and start looking like vintage Melvin Gordon.
See, but my question is, and I had the same question when the Broncos signed him, is what is vintage Melvin Gordon? He's always been kind of a compiler to me, going back to his time with the Chargers. And I'm reading his average yards a carry in every season since 2015. I'll rattle it off to you if you want. 3.5, 3.9, 3.9, 5.1 in 2018. And then he had 3.8, 4.6 in 2020, 4.5 in 2021, and he was averaging 3.5 this season. He's always been a good but not overly great running back. To me, more of a jag than he is a true linchpin for the offense. That's why I'm not shedding any tears that he's gone now. And look at that. You cut Melvin Gordon, you finally break off a run of 20-plus yards. Latavius Murray is the better back. He's not sexy in terms of carrying the football, but he gets the job done, and he won't fumble it as a nice bonus.
I was happy for him to have his biggest day as a Bronco in the immediate aftermath of Melvin Gordon's dismissal. Phil McLaughlin throwing down on Facebook. Appreciate you, brother. He says, evening, Priest and Deacon Scott. I don't think Payton should be on the hot seat. After all, the entire country, except maybe Seattle, thought the Wilson-Hackett duo combination was a win. We were all so hyped, but now reality shows up and it sucks. Let's just move on. And once again, pray for next year. Way to go, MHH, for keeping it real. Go Broncos, MHH for life. I'm inclined to give him a pass, but he's not blameless, unfortunately, Phil, because if you look at this team's 3 main problems, they're all tied. Well, let me say this a different way. George Payton made 3 fateful decisions in the offseason. He could have hired Kevin O'Connell, whose team is, what is it, Zach, 9-2, 8-2, whatever. Didn't. Minnesota did. They're reaping the rewards. Could have hired Dan Quinn, who went back to still just being a coordinator in Dallas. That team is, are they 9-3 now or 8-3? Anyway, doing well, okay? Plus all the guys they interviewed. Hackett was one of 10 interviews, okay? So fateful decision number 1, he goes with Nathaniel Hackett. Fateful decision number 2, he goes ahead and he pulls the trigger on the Russell Wilson trade. Now, I don't blame him for doing that at all. I don't blame Payton for seeing the opportunity to kind of cheat, so to speak, getting a franchise quarterback right away. Boom. Yeah, no problem. You want to give him up? Here's a couple ones. Here's a couple twos. Here's a few players. Thank you, please. But the one that might ultimately sink him, Zach, in tandem with Hackett, was the decision to make him such a highly paid quarterback with that extension on a relative sight unseen basis. And I know by that point you had the OTAs, you had training camp, you had some sort of a sample size and some sort of a feedback to give you enough warm and fuzzies to pull the trigger, but he was apparently deceived. He jumped the gun on that, and that is what ultimately, now that this team is so far sunk, that is what ultimately, Zach, could sink George Paton. He could end up getting fired. If you look at the nuclear option, Jason Fitzgerald of Over the Cap put out a piece today looking at the plausible options the Broncos have with regard to Russell Wilson. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. They don't have really any option with Russell Wilson that doesn't involve many tens of millions of dead cap. And the soonest that they could actually maybe plausibly make a cut on Wilson would be after next season. So Peyton is definitely on the hook, Zach.
Yeah, I find it hard to judge Peyton in hindsight, even for the contract, because at that point, you can't predict that Russell Wilson was going to be so terribly bad, Nathaniel Hackett so terribly bad, and we were praising Peyton for getting ahead of the market and not waiting for, Joe Burrow to sign or Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, and make it, $55 million a year as the baseline. We thought what Russell Wilson got was a relative good deal for the Broncos and relatively team friendly considering his past production. The Broncos paid Russ for what he was and not paid him for what he could have been with the Broncos or what they thought he was going to be. They paid him like a 9-time Pro Bowler, and I guess Peyton and company figured, well, he'll at least be close to that level in Denver. He might not be prime Russell Wilson, but who could have foreseen anyone, even the biggest skeptic, Russell Wilson being this bad, looking so broken, Nathaniel Hackett being so incompetent? It was literally a perfect storm of crap that hit Dove Valley all at one time. And I say that completely serious.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. I don't envy the Walton Penners for trying to get to the bottom of this in terms of, how do we really move past this as an organization? Do we have the right guy calling the shots in the front office? Again, I am inclined, to be clear, I am inclined to give Peyton a pass. Maybe when you fire Nathaniel Hackett, whenever that day comes and you begin the process of a new hiring sweep, Zach, that he maybe has his hand held a little bit more from the new ownership, because I'm thinking back to the committee that was involved with George Paton on the hiring of Nathaniel Hackett. Who was on it? You had PR VP Patrick Smythe. You had John Elway was on the committee, so to speak. Ex-CEO and team president Joe Ellis. None of those guys had any luck hiring a head coach since Gary Kubiak. Like, all those guys, their take, it's old, it's washed, it's not relevant, it's bad juju. Why were they involved anyway? Except for the fact that he was making a head coach hire in year 2 as a GM. There was that collective handholding. I don't know. But they were the wrong people to help kind of figure that out. How do you feel, Zach, about the Walton Penners? And I would assume on some level, the new team president, his name just escaped me.
Damani Leach.
Thank you. Probably being involved at least in the interviews for feedback purposes. How do you think, if Peyton is kept, do you think they're going to take on a significantly more, active role in those interviews and the decision of who the next head coach is?
They could, or they could hire a consulting company to go out and find the best candidate. A lot of teams do that. I think it's Korn Ferry, who are the company that handles most of that litigation. And I don't really prefer that, though. Business suits looking for football people. I want a football person looking for a football person. Ultimately, I feel like if they do keep Peyton around the Walton Penner family, it's because they trust him at least for one more year, and it should be Peyton's pick. If I knock Nathaniel Hackett for deferring to everyone else, I have to knock George Paton for doing the same thing in the interview process. But if you boil it down, the top 3 candidates, Dan Quinn, Kevin O'Connell, Nathaniel Hackett, if they would have went with Quinn, it wouldn't have looked so bad. Kevin O'Connell has shown now in hindsight he can coach a football team. It's just that George Paton picked the worst possible candidate at the worst possible time. And if you're a critic of his, Peyton's, well, you should want him to get one more crack at this because it would put his name on the line completely. There's no more other contributing factor to the head coaching hire. That would be all George Paton. And if you want him out, then if the next head coach fails, he'd be out with him. I don't think he gets fired yet. I think he gets one more year, at least.
We shall see. Did we get that? Please read the messages I've sent. I already know it's hard for you guys to get Wilson some protection receivers who can get open and catch the ball. And a new head coach, you will see a different team. That's from Marcus Lewis Hanna. It was frustrating, by the way. Thank you again for number 2 tonight, Marcus. Zach, today at the podium and exasperated. I used exacerbated and exasperated in the same episode. Okay, you're welcome. But a completely just out of answers. Well, let me put it that way. Nathaniel Hackett was asked on that topic, hey, coach, is it Russ is not being protected enough? Where does this confidence go? Like, what do you do to get it back? Is it that the receivers aren't getting separation? He's like, it's a little bit of everything. Next question, basically. Once he said it's a little bit of everything, it's like there was nothing more that he could say, even though he added additional remarks. It wasn't additional context. This dude is out of answers. But it is something, Zach, that we talked about yesterday, which is getting to the bottom of this. It's not easy as far as an in-season fix because you get into this chicken or the egg proposition. Is it the protection? Is it Russell Wilson's seeing ghosts? Is it the wide receivers who are not doing a great job at getting separation? The answer is yes.
It's everything. Yeah, exactly. There's so many factors, and I tweeted this yesterday. Once again, it's not black and white. There's multiple things. The injuries are a factor. The OL is a factor. The running game or lack thereof is a factor. The receivers and Russell Wilson. It's not all on Nathaniel Hackett. Russell Wilson has not been good. At times, he's been downright horrible where you wish for Trevor Siemian or Case Keenum. It's been that bad from a $250 million quarterback. But to me, it all starts at the top. Coaching. If you had a more competent head coach, some of these problems are secondary to the main problem. They're effects to the cause, and the cause is Hackett, and he's made everything around him that much worse.
Deanna, from the top rope. Bam, one of these. Thank you. Love you. Appreciate you. You've just been on fire lately, and it means a lot to us. She's bolstering her position, Zach, atop the Super Chat rankings. You got a jersey coming your way at the end of this month, unless someone outdoes you in the next few days. But Deanna, we know for you it's not about that. Thank you. Really appreciate you. She says, evening, gentlemen. Why does Hackett still have a job? What's it going to take? It's just sickening. Hashtag MHH for life. Zach, what do you say to Deanna?
Because either George Paton doesn't have the power or George Paton does have the power and he prefers to wait until after the season. And everyone understands that. Maybe Hackett has no answers because he knows. The writing's on the wall. He is a human being. He has a brain. He has eyes. He can read. He can hear. And he can see what's going on around him. I just love his response yesterday when he was asked after the game about his job status. Any concern about that? He goes, I'm just trying to win a football game. Like it's such a pathetic answer from a pathetic head coach, someone that I personally stumped for, advocated for. I feel dumb now for doing so in hindsight. But Deanna, I can't answer you. The reason is because someone in power, the Walton Penner Group or George Paton, is not ready to pull the trigger quite yet.
It sounds like you might have gotten in on the stream a little bit beyond where we talked about this, but as Silent One mentioned in his super chat earlier in the stream, and Zach even before that, one of the prevailing thought processes around this is that Hackett hasn't been fired because the Walton Penners removed that prerogative from George Paton because he too is on notice. In other words, they're both fighting for their jobs right now. Ron Hall Jr., appreciate you, buddy, says, I hope they get a few wins, but I don't see it the rest of the year. Yeah, it's hard to look at this schedule with the team that we know this is and see another win, as sad as it is to say. I mean, best you could do against. I get it was the Panthers' strength, Zach, going into this all season really has been their defense and their running game. And boy, did they play to those strengths yesterday. The Broncos only got 10 points on the board, and Carolina, they finished with 185 yards on the ground, for crying out loud.
Yeah, and speaking of that, it's kind of neither here nor there, but the Broncos just picked up a linebacker by the name of Dakota Allen, who they signed off the Browns practice squad last week. He had one game with the Broncos. Guess what happened to him, Chad? Take one guess.
Cut.
No, he's hurt.
Of course.
He has a lower body. He has a hamstring injury, soft tissue injury. It's just, I can't wait for the season to end. Hackett's one thing, and he should be replaced. But Lauren Landau, man, I'm not scared to say his name. I'll say it every podcast until he is gone. He needs to be replaced because this is not normal. Far from it.
Yeah, it's out of control. Eric says, I guarantee the fumble king Melvin gives up the rock at a crucial time. Hopefully playoff game for the Chiefs. Bet. We shall see, my dog. Jeremy Kusich, good to see you, buddy. He says, before we run Hackett out of town, let's see a few games with a quarterback that will operate within the offense the way it's designed. Hashtag RIP. It's funny you say that, Jeremy, because you had the commentators on yesterday's game basically voicing that same thing. Like, why are they still playing Russ? He's obviously a shell of himself, lacks utter confidence. I mean, Zach, it's pathetic. The amount of money this guy's making, it's pathetic that his head coach, entering week 13 on the heels of an 8th loss, was asked about how do you get Russell Wilson his confidence back? What do you do, coach? And he didn't say something like, no, Russ isn't lacking confidence. We just got to figure. He was just like, yeah, I don't know. We got to figure it out. It's a combination of things, and we're evaluating it. And blah blah blah. This is where we're at, Zach.
I mean, maybe I'm misunderstanding the premise of the comment, but we saw Brett Rippon at quarterback for the Broncos this year already when he played the Jets, and he completed a little over 50% of his passes for 225 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick, and a 56.9 rating. The common denominator, that's what we all talked about after that game, has been this system. And even though they took away play calling from Hackett, Clint Kubiak's doesn't look a lot better, or the results aren't any better. They can't get into the end zone. They're settling for field goals. They can't score points. This offense is historically bad. So even though Kubiak's calling plays, he's working within the confines of Hackett's scheme. This is the scheme that Hackett put in there, and obviously it's not good enough.
Marcus, yes, dude, you are the man. We do appreciate you. Let me read this real quick, this response. I did a kind of mocking paraphrase of Nathaniel Hackett's response to the how do you get Russ his confidence back? What is going on? He said, quote, it's a combination of a lot of things. There is some semblance of newness with this whole group. We've had a lot of changes throughout the offense with different people that have been out there playing with him. We need to give him the confidence back. We need to give him the confidence back to be able to make the plays that he can make. He's out there and he's fighting every single play. I give him so much credit. He's taken a bunch of hits, and it's because he's trying to do everything he can to make a play. I appreciate that and how he's doing that. Everybody has to play better around him. So he 100% removed the onus from Russell Wilson. He acknowledged that he's got a confidence issue, Zach, and yet he basically blamed everybody but Russ for Russell Wilson's absolute, utter regression.
And see, that's inaccurate as well. I can see through what he's trying to do is, be the good soldier or be the leader of men and take all the responsibility. But the truth is, it's on Russell Wilson as well. It's not all Hackett. It's not all the O-line, the running backs, the receivers. Russell Wilson looks like not even a shell of his former self. He looks like a microcosm of his former self. He's holding on to the ball too long, taking sacks, can't see the middle of the field, missing wide open people in crunch time, like in the Colts game. It is extremely on Russell Wilson as well. I just think the bigger factor here, the root cause of the Broncos' downfall, I mean, he looked pretty good to end the year last year in Seattle, Russell Wilson did, coming back from the finger injury. I find it hard to believe, Chad, in a matter of months, a guy goes from competent or above average or good to downright terrible.
He made the Pro Bowl, didn't he? Or was last year the 1 year he didn't make a Pro Bowl?
I don't know.
Hey, look, I mean, I've become so buried in the Russell Wilson thing. Yeah, he was a Pro Bowler last year. last year. Okay, Phil, you're a prince, brother. So what Zach said is right on the money, which is this coaching staff and their whole process, their scheme, from their scheme to their philosophy to their approach to teaching to how they hold people accountable, their discipline overall. I mean, across the board, it was literally the worst possible fit for Russell Wilson. You need to. That's the thing that these owners need to understand. Someone's got to make this clear to them. The longer you allow Nathaniel Hackett and this crew to stick around, specifically Hackett. I would fire Hackett and Outen. When the firing happens, I would fire Hackett and Outen. Okay. The longer you let them linger, the more you risk exacerbating this into a legit permanent form of Russell Wilson. That's a legit concern. Marcus, how many times does he have to take hits? I would be bloody shell shocked. No wonder he's not looking good. Yeah, that's the thing. We get back to chicken or egg, right? And we can make all the excuses in the world about Dalton Reisner is the only offensive lineman, day one starter that has started all the games so far this season. You're missing your linchpin left tackle, Garrett Bowles. You ended up getting an upgrade when Lloyd Cushenberry went down, when Graham Glasgow came in to play center. Quinn Miners dealt with some injury issues early on, but he's been there for you the last quarter of a season. And then you got Cam Fleming back, who's replacing you at left tackle. He started out the season as your right tackle. It has been topsy-turvy. You lost your number one running back. You lost your number two wide receiver in training camp. Your two young receivers, in Judy and Hamler, haven't played for a couple of weeks. It's not ideal, but true franchise quarterbacks rise above that. Even if you're unable to win the game, you don't look like a rookie who just had his card pulled. I mean, Russell Wilson is this close, Zach, to be being reduced to tears on a sideline like Paxton Lynch, boobing his eyes out. I feel that, dude.
While we're on the subject, you mentioned Outen and Hackett on the firing line. Can I throw out Butch Berry in there as well? My God, was that an abject disaster going from Munchak to Butch Berry? And Marcus, I agree with you. Again, it's not all on one thing. It's not all Hackett. It's not all Russ. It's not all on the O-line, though. You know, I love the people that talk up Cameron Fleming as some serviceable or average right tackle. He's terrible. He's always been terrible. He's a decent run blocker, but he is so bad in pass protection. I can't count how many times I saw a Panthers defender flying off the edge because he beat Cam Fleming cold. That being said, though, Russell Wilson's been in the league long enough. You know, good O-line, bad O-line. He's holding the ball way too long. He's always looking for the big play. He wants the hero ball mentality. He wants to be the one to make the play, and he's hurting the team because of that. So that's not on the O-line. I mean, they lit up a lot of sacks this year. If you actually watch the film and count the sacks, I would say at least a third can be attributed, if not way more, to Russell Wilson just holding on to it and not getting rid of it.
Fractalized, jumping in 2 nights in a row. Appreciate that, big dog. He says, are you guys still real fans? Did you give up? Well, listen, we're here on a day in, day out basis because it's our job to be, okay? Have I given up on the Broncos? I'm not sure exactly what context you're saying, you're speaking to here. I'll be honest with you, Fractalized. Yes, I have given up on any possibility of the season being turned around, if that's what you mean. Like that, it's just not going to happen, guys. The last 2 weeks were clear, direct evidence of that. There was hope that it could in London with that win. What is it? 3 losses in a row, right? Since the
7 of 8.
Since the Jacksonville game, right? So I've given up on the notion that anything is going to become of this season. Have I given up on the Broncos from a meta perspective? No. But this year's it's in the can, dude. It's, stick a fork in them.
I'm not going to advocate for the Broncos to tank games. I'm not going to tell anyone how to be a fan, but I'm not going to blow smoke either. I'm not going to be positive for the sake of being positive or be delusional for the sake of being delusional. The Broncos are a bad football team right now, and they're in a bad way because they don't have a quarterback or a head coach that's performing up to standard. If you had an elite person at one of those spots, you can get by, you can make hay. But when you have failure at both, that's when you become a laughingstock. And right now the Broncos are. The future, if they get the coaching hire right, if that coach can turn around Russell Wilson, we're as high as anyone on them, but we have to call a spade right now. It's bad.
Deanna throwing down. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
my
Dan.
friend.
Wow.
Really helping us here at MHH. She says, with another very generous super chat, Wilson should be benched. Let Rippon get some time in. We need O-line. We need offensive line to start looking and get O-line for next year. I'll meet you part of the way there, Deanna, in the sense that at a certain point, because you have long-term aspirations and you're married to Russell Wilson, at a certain point, maybe it does make some sense to just sit him down for the season if it's going to continue to be as brutally bad as it's been the last 2 weeks in particular. I mean, it's been bad all year, let's face it, right? But these last two games in particular have been horrendous, embarrassing, like mockery level. This is not a franchise guy. He is beyond what you could even call a slump. Like, this dude appears to be broken. And that's why I continue to hammer on. I'm concerned you continue to let Nathaniel Hackett at the controls. You risk this stretching into 2023, regardless of who that next hire is. I truly believe that.
But what's the point of putting in Brett Rippon? He's not the future. At this point, the Broncos need to figure out what the future is and who the future can be. It may be Russell Wilson, but it's damn sure not Brett Rippon. And at this point, even for the next coaching staff, I want to see Russell Wilson play because I want to figure out the things that he does right and the things that he can't do well at age 34 now. And I want to embrace his assets, and I want to diminish his weaknesses if I can. I don't care who the head coach's play caller is next year. The Broncos are committed to Russell Wilson, and they need to figure out what he does best in the twilight stage of his career.
We got young Mac Dog representing tonight from where was it in Texas? Scott, Lubbock? Was it Lubbock? In Lubbock, Texas. What's up, big dog? We got to meet Mac Dog and his old man at the MHH meet and greet back in September, which, what a pleasure. He says, what's up, guys? Long time. Hope we can get a coach that can get Russ going next year. Also, please draft O-line. Amen and amen, big dog. Hope you've been well. The concern now is, and again, this goes back to why are you holding on to Hackett? There's rumblings out there, Zach, that none of the top candidates are going to want this job. So, yeah, I got to rip this man. I mean, it's beyond damage control right now. It's like fight for the next 5-year survival of this franchise.
I'll believe that when I see it. That, coaches just turn down the Broncos en masse. They're not going to turn down this. This always talks pretty loudly, and the Broncos have plenty of that. And also, there's only 32 of these jobs on the planet, Chad, an NFL head coach. They're going to find someone. It might not be the sexiest hire. It might be a retread like Dan Quinn, but they will find someone to take this job. Bet on that.
Or a Frank Reich. I mean, with what Frank Reich was dealt in the quarterback department those years in Indy, I mean, you give him a guy like Russ with a track record, a resume like that, even in the face of these struggles, and you go, look, you're our new head coach, fix Russell Wilson, and here's many millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. He's probably not looking that particular gift horse in the mouth. Flat Earth Trini in the house. What's up, dude? At what point do they bench Russell? We've seen them bench prior QBs for less. I've never seen a team so loyal to a bad acquisition. MHH rocks. Thank you, bro. It's funny. Flat Earth guy. I had a friend, dude, that was like, Flat Earth. He was like, I'll weigh into the Flat Earth thing. And he's like, I'm like, dude, come on now. Get out. He's like, no, dude, watch these videos. Here, dude, will you at least just watch one of these videos? Evidences of the Flat Earth. I'm like, all right, for our friendship, just so that I can tell you that I have, go ahead and send me the link. And I watched it, and I found myself, Zach, like the first one, I'm like, evidence number one. I'm like, oh, I found myself nodding my head. I'm like, yeah, that is interesting. Evidence number two, I'm like, Yeah, getting into like 3 or 4 or 5, I'm like, I'm not educated enough as a friggin' scientist to even come close to saying I should disbelieve the notion that we live on a globe. But anyway, I'm derailing this conversation. Flat Earth, what are you going to do? Jeremy, this team really misses Timmy Patrick.
I said it, I think, either yesterday or last Thursday's podcast. The biggest loss to the Broncos offense via injury was not Garrett Bowles, was not Javonte. It is definitely Tim Patrick to have that safety blanket, that the pair of sure hands, the catch radius, the reliability, and the fact that he's such a gamer. They need a leader. They need a dog on offense. They don't have that at all. They are a rudderless ship. They are a toothless bunch that has no fight and no fire to him. Patrick has the fire. When he went down, that was almost a death knell. Looking back on it now for Wilson and company.
Marcus, again, what is that, number 4 tonight? Bro, you're on fire. Thank you, bud. He says, I still believe that Hackett was trying to play the Green Bay playbook maybe instead of playing one that suits Russ. Yeah, I think there's a little something to that square peg, round hole type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard from Packers fans themselves that they've watched a Broncos game and they see so many similarities in the Green Bay offense. Long developing precision timing routes that Aaron Rodgers loves to run with the Packers. And the problem is that Hackett tried to make Russ into Aaron Rodgers. And you can't do that. It's not how it works. They're two different kinds of quarterbacks. And I don't like Pete Carroll. I don't really care for the Seahawks, but I do give them credit for managing Russell Wilson effectively, putting him in a system where they maximize his strengths and reduce his weaknesses or hide them as much as possible. Hackett has done none of that. He's done the opposite, in fact.
Peyton, good to see you, buddy. Appreciate the stars. He says, been a while, working 65 hours a week. Man, you're like that. You're like that song from the great Canadian bastion of rock, Rush. Working man. You're the working man, dude. Appreciate it. He says, smash the like button and share, guys. Thanks for representing Forrest Clayton and supporting as you always do, my friend. We're just happy to get you when we can, big dog. Marcus, number 5. Count them. Yes, Zach, you may be right, but I think he's holding on the ball. Of course, we're talking Russell Wilson holding on to it too long because no receiver is getting open.
It's true. That's why I said it's not just one thing. You're kind of proving my point, Marcus. There's multiple factors at play here, but even when there's a receiver wide open doing this with his hands, a la KJ Hamler against the Colts, Russell Wilson is ignoring him, and he'd rather fit the ball in a double coverage to someone like Tyree Cleveland or Courtland Sutton. So it's everyone. Everyone is at fault for this disaster that is the Denver offense.
Sharp Baldwin, hey, keep your chin up. Keep your chin up. It's going to be okay. Dave Glassman, we love Dave. Dave is just steady and consistent as the day is long. Big member of our community. Helps keep the conversation going. We love you, Dave. Broncos Denver. Hey, what's up, bro? Thank you for the stars. Keep coming back, big dog. We're here every night as it applies to these Mile High Huddle streams, okay? Okay, we're at 48 minutes. We're going to start winding it down here. But Phil throwing down big boy stars. Golly. He says, what about, and I'm pretty sure you mean Jim Harbaugh. What about Jim Harbaugh, Zach?
I got this question on Twitter as well, and I didn't answer it. I wanted to, I forgot, but I'll answer it for you, Phil. I don't understand, and I'm not against you in particular, just the whole notion of Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan, where didn't he just sign an extension last year? That's why he leveraged the NFL interest against Michigan and signed a new contract. So that's that. He's also turned that program around. I mean, they are a championship contender annually with Harbaugh at the controls. So why would he want to leave a cushy situation like that where he's a big fish in a small pond, where he has legendary status, and come to Denver to fix Russell Wilson, to succeed Nathaniel Hackett, and be watched over a new ownership group led by the Walmarts? No, I don't think he would come to Denver. I don't think it's realistic at all. I think there's more of a chance that Sean Payton comes out of retirement than Jim Harbaugh defects Michigan.
I got to address this real quick because it's funny Michael said this. Hey, look, see how Jake Plummer's laying down right now? You could kind of see his jersey the way it was before. You could make out that that's number 16. Well, yes, actually, he says, is Jake Plummer taking a nap? Yes, he is. And I'll tell you why. My little boy Theo, when he comes to visit me in the office, all right, during a work day, he doesn't come to see dad. He comes to hang out with John and Peyton and Champ and Jake. Well, lo and behold, on one of the last little hangs, he broke Jake in half. Now, it's all good. It fits back on, but until I glue it, he stays up there. So when he comes in, he goes, I get them all down except Jake. And he points to the last one. He's like, Jake. And I say, no. And he would just throw a fit until I laid him down. And I said, no, Jake's sleeping. He's taking a nap. And then he forgot about it. He's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So that's why Jake was laying down. Good eye there, Mike. Appreciate it.
pretty much epitomizes the Broncos quarterbacking carousel, doesn't it? A guy broken in half.
All right, Mac Dog, can we make Peyton Manning a consultant when hiring a coach? Sure. Yeah, you could make anybody a consultant if they're willing and you actually care about their input. But it really would, I think, be, well, I had one little red flag of doubt jump up, and that is this, Zach. We know that when Mike, what's his name, dude? I just forgot his name. The LA Chargers, Broncos OC, Mike McCoy, Judas Priest. When Mike McCoy took the Chargers job following Peyton's first year in Denver, all right, following the 2012 season, the Broncos lost their offensive coordinator and their defensive coordinator because Dennis Allen went and took actually, that was the year before, Dennis Allen taking the Raiders job. But anyway, back to McCoy. When he left, I know it was Peyton Manning who advocated for his quarterbacks coach, Adam Gase, Zach, to be promoted to offensive coordinator. Now, you could say he was 100% right because look what happened in 2013. That was the 606 points, and Peyton threw 55 touchdowns and the yardage record and all that. But then when he went on to become a head coach and multiple stops, right, he was atrocious as a head coach, Adam Gase. So do you trust Peyton Manning completely? I would still love to know. If he was down to be a part of that, Zach, I'd say, okay, I'm the Walton Penners. I am Rob Walton, and I am the, 19th richest man, the 19th richest human being on the planet Earth. Yeah, here's $5 million or whatever. That's chump change to these guys to help us get it right, Peyton.
This is where I feel like Peyton's legendary status in Broncos country and how many people just adore him kind of clouds their judgment a little bit. What does he know about picking a head coach? I mean, he's great quarterback, arguably the best quarterback of all time, but he's never been on a coaching staff. He's never been in a front office. He's never been in an executive role where he's had to do that. And number two, if you do that, then you pretty much relegate George Paton to bystander. And if you're going to keep George Paton as GM, well, that GM should be allowed to handpick his head coach. So you don't want to emasculate anyone in the process, similar to how Hackett emasculated himself by giving up play calling duties. He halfway fired himself already by doing that. And he's just waiting, I think, at this point for the Walton Penner Group / Peyton to finish off the pink slip.
I'm seeing a little, as I'm scrolling down through the chat, a little mini debate breaking out about the world being flat. I shouldn't have even mentioned it. Marcus Lewis Henna, bro, you're just the man. We really appreciate you tonight, big dog. Every night, but tonight you're throwing down. Says, love you guys. As always, it's late here. Yeah, go get some shut-eye, big dog. He's, what is it, Scott, 9 hours ahead in the UK? 7 hours. Okay. Deanna, holy smokes. Tonight, man, people are on fire. We love it. We appreciate you. She says, with another very generous super chat, I agree with you, Zach. It's everyone's fault. They need to pull the trigger on Hackett, though, before he destroys Wilson and our entire team. I'm worried about all of the Broncos, #MHH for life. We're sharing a brain on that, Deanna.
Anyone who says otherwise has an agenda. Anyone who can pinpoint, one factor and limit it to one as the reason why the Broncos are so bad this year has an agenda, either against Russell Wilson, for Russell Wilson, against Hackett, for Hackett, and so on and so on. It is a combination of multiple things, though the debate starts, what is the biggest factor? Not the only factor, the biggest factor. And people have their difference of opinion. Some think it's Russell Wilson. Some think it's the O-line. I happen to think it's the head coach, who's shown in all three phases, not just as an offensive play caller or a quarterback guru, whatever he was supposed to be, but when you don't get a punt returner out there, when players don't respect you, when you don't have the command of the team, that's not a head coach. That's not head coaching material.
Silent One says, speaking of this subject, have you guys heard the rumor that George Paton wanted Dan Quinn, but it was vetoed by Elway and his, quote, consulting firm? Zach, this is the first I've ever heard anything on that subject. I'll be honest with you. I know that there's that famous video of Russell Wilson on day one walking into Elway's office, and he says something like, hey, what's up, boss, or something like that, implying that Elway's still calling the shots. But I think that's more of like a honorific, you know what I mean? Like, hey, you're the man, you're the boss. It's like, hey, whatever. I didn't read too much into that, but that's the first I've ever heard that, Silent One.
I From the outset, from what I remember last year, Dan Quinn was the front runner. And supposedly George Payton was enamored with Dan Quinn, and then Hackett came around, and I thought he just killed his interview. I thought he sold himself really well for Payton to fall in love with him, or at least fall in like with him. He's shown to be very energetic. He probably laid out a good offensive plan for whoever was going to be the quarterback and whoever was on the Broncos offense. I don't buy into that rumor necessarily.
Howie, frickin' day in the frickin' house. Love it. He says, I can't frickin' wait for the sweet days of better frickin' Broncos football. Might be waiting a frickin' while. I know, dude. We might be. We'll see. I'm only giving up on this season becoming anything. I'm not giving up on next season. That's not in my nature, but I'm still going to worry because that's also in my nature. I'm a little bit of a worry wart. Naj, bro, love you, big dog. Keep your chin up. He says, hey, brothers, call me crazy. I still believe Wilson will turn this around. Seems to me, ever since his best friend, who was also his sounding board, passed, he hasn't been the same. To me, it's in his head. Fix that, and we're back. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I could be it. I mean, I think something mental is definitely going on with Russell Wilson, psychological, whatever. I've heard he hasn't taken the breakup from Seattle very well. The criticism he's getting from his once beloved Seahawks fans has, is living rent free in his mind. I've heard rumors that him and Sierra have marital problems and she's changed him, whatever. I don't know enough about Russell Wilson, the person, or Russell Wilson, the player. This is his first season in Denver. Seahawks fans had a decade with him, but there's something going on beyond football because when you're a quarterback of a team, I don't care how humble, low-key you are. If a backup nose tackle starts screaming at you in your face, you got to get fired up. You got to scream back. You have to show some emotion. He looked like a scared dog, Russell Wilson did when he got yelled at by Mike Purcell. He kind of cowered and he looked terrified, quite frankly. So there's something between the eyeballs, something in here that is not quite right. I do not know what it is, though.
That's going to be on. I mean, the Broncos are these incompetent guys in the coaching staff right now are trying to figure it out, but it's probably going to be a problem for another coaching staff to approach and hopefully solve. Ron Hall Jr. throwing down stars. Appreciate you, bro. Says, I picked the wrong year to start watching the Broncos in the NFL again. Well, hey, dude, we're glad you found us and you're with us. So thank you for the support and being a part of the conversation, big dog. Keep your chin up.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in, Ron.
We're about out of time. Let me check something real quick on Eric Weber. I think he had one. Yes, right here. Sharing a brain. I read an article where the author floated the idea, says Eric, of the Walton Penner Group hashing out a deal and then throwing down major bucks to get Sean Payton from New Orleans. The main crux or caveat being they give him the GM title in addition to head coach. Thoughts? Zach, for just so people know the lay of the land, the majority of the time, if not all the time, that Payton was in New Orleans, he had Mickey Loomis as his counterpart at GM. And I don't remember hearing or reading anything that his relationship with Loomis or the fact that he was not the GM calling all the shots had anything to do with his decision to retire.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this. Isn't Bill Belichick the only GM / head coach in the NFL?
Shanahan, because Shanahan's not GM, but he has final personnel say. So John Lynch, he executes all the duties of a GM and he gets the title, but he still has to get Shanahan's approval.
I guess my thing is this, like, you not only fire George Payton because you don't need him around anymore, you're giving up a lot of money to get Sean Payton. You're giving up probably the first round pick you got from the Dolphins to get Sean Payton, and you're going to give him GM responsibility on top of that. Great head coach, great offensive mind. I have no doubt he'd fix Russell Wilson. I have no doubt. I've said this before about a year ago. It's coming back to bite me. I have no doubt, though, he'd get the Broncos back to the playoffs. He is that experienced and that qualified. But to give him GM responsibility on top of that, and especially when he never really had that power before, that's a bridge too far for my taste.
It's also important to remember that Mike Shanahan had those duties, especially the second half of his tenure in Denver. It didn't end well. He botched all those drafts with very few exceptions. He had a few gems here and there. But as Scott mentions, that there's a reason why you don't see it very much in the modern NFL, and that's because It was a big thing for a time until most of those coaches who had to juggle both duties and wanted both duties got in over their heads and were fired, and NFL owners got wise to it. But guys, we're going to sign off for tonight.
Just thinking about it though, I would love a George Payton, Sean Payton, the Payton and
Yeah,
Payton
yeah.
combination, because you have a player you have a person who's importing the talent. In George Payton's case, he can draft with the best of them, but you'd finally have a coach that can coach up the talent in Sean Payton. So I would love the Broncos to go out and get Payton's rights from New Orleans. We will see how that transpires. That was the aftermath.
Real quick, was Drew Brees class of 01? Yes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's about half a decade. But the only point I was going to make is a lot of people thought Drew Brees was washed and that he could never recover from that shoulder. And Peyton resurrected his career and went on to make a lot of hay. So he might not be the guy that looks at Russell Wilson as unsalvageable considering his track record. That's all I was going to say.
He also resurrected Jameis Winston. And if he can do that and, eat those W's with Jameis Winston, I think he can do the same thing with Russell Wilson. That was, though, the aftermath episode of the MHH podcast. Thank you all for tuning in with us. Follow us on Twitter at the MHH pod, the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking, as you see on your screen right now, the hats, the hoodies, the shirts, we got it all right there. HuddleUpPod.com, check it out. And also Facebook.com/MileHighHuddlePod. Be sure you're liking that page and following that page. And if you haven't, go to Apple Podcasts and leave your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some of that merch each and every month. But if anything, guys, as you see ticking below you now, subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos country just like you.
My key commands weren't working. What the heck? All right. Hey, shout out to these great Super Chat superstars tonight on YouTube. Sam Bam throwing down. The Duchess. Cole Johnson throwing down. Silent One. Marcus Lewis Henna. Deanna throwing down. Fractalized. Mac Dog. Flat Earth Trini, who got a little debate going in the chat. Let's see. Naj, love you, bro. And then on Facebook, Phil McLaughlin, much love, dude. You really threw down tonight. Same with Ron Hall Jr., throwing down. Eric Weber, Jeremy Kusich, Howie Frickin' Day, Clayton Heron, Broncos Denver, Mike Reno, and Dave Glassman. Much love and respect. We will see y'all, Zach and I, Thursday.
Have a great start to your week. Take care, and as always, go Broncos.